Welcome to Movie World, the place where we only talk movies. I'm Andy Signore, and I'm here to review Matrix Resurrections, the fourth installment in the Matrix franchise. Well, I really never thought we were going to get a fourth Matrix anytime soon. But now, in the state of things, with studios filling out streaming services and dying to have more IP, here we are. Was it worth it is the big question. I gotta say, it was better than I thought it was going to be. It really has its moments. There are some incredibly meta moments that really do work, that made me really impressed with sort of the gutsiness of Lana Wachowski and sort of the attempt to justify to bring this all back. The film literally sort of argues with itself at a point, like and pokes fun at the idea of this film in a way, because the film centers around Neo, Thomas Anderson, back in the Matrix, as a game developer of the original Matrix trilogies. Yes, that's what the film centers around. And I got to be honest, it works. I don't want to get too much more into it, but that's we've talked about it before. But they do attempt to explain everything as to why. This is a film that will absolutely require multiple viewings. I saw this with Danny Geekdom 101, who had spoiled the whole movie. And he's a Matrix guy. He's a Matrix fan. And we were talking both afterwards. Like, we both were like, I think they answered everything. They definitely explained it all. But a lot of it is so quickly explained that it's definitely a film that will require multiple viewings. And probably, see it in the theater and then watch it later that weekend or on HBO Max. It's going to be on both. You can sort of watch it again right away to pick up what you missed. Keanu Reeves is back. He's bearded, longer hair. And he's seemingly back in the Matrix. And Trinity is there as well. There's a couple other, cameos and people that come back in ways, but this really is a reboot of the Matrix. And overall, I have to say, I enjoyed it. There are some new characters, particularly Neil Patrick Harris, who I think does a fantastic job. Jonathan, is it Groff? He also is interesting. He does a good job as well. And I like Jessica Henwick as Bugs, is her name? Like Bugs Bunny. And they're all good additions. The film definitely is going to have some people are going to have massive issues with this film, especially its ending. There's going to be some complaints about its ending. But I did think the final act is exciting. It does. The film starts off a little weird. There's a lot of stuff that sort of just happens, trying to sort of explain and justify. The film really kicks into gear once you meet Neo and Thomas Anderson again and start realizing the world he's in, what's going on, and trying to figure out what's happening here. They do a really clever justification into that whole world, and what's real, what's not, why is he there? Is he trapped again? Does he know he's trapped again? All those questions will be addressed and are brought up in the film in what I think was a very clever way. This is a hard film to reboot and to bring back. And they pretty much just did it transparency, like calling out some of the things in a way that I gotta say, it was clever. That's fun. The journey they go on makes sense. I didn't dislike any of that. I will say, if I have any gripes with the film, the action isn't as stellar as I hoped, and I blame the editing and just the cinematography. It just doesn't have that sort of that stable feel that some of the original Matrix fights did, where you're like, oh my God, those guys are really on it. There's a little bit more cutting and things that take away, and a lot of lighting effects of like silhouettes to try and maybe hide the actors' ages and stuff. It just doesn't have the same kinetic action. And the film at one point even sort of makes fun of that, if you can believe it. But the action isn't as strong as I wanted it to be. And that's definitely a gripe that I think some people will notice. However, the film is more funny, and like not funny, but just funner and intriguing in a way. And for those of you who are really deep into Matrix lore, I think you're really going to connect to this, because they definitely are. This movie definitely continues from the events of Matrix Revolutions, which to me by far is the worst of them all. Matrix Reloaded, Matrix Revolutions, and Matrix 1, it would not be unwise to go rewatch the trilogy before you go see this, just to get a little bit more in your head, because while you don't need to, you're definitely going to understand more of it, because there's definitely some stuff I'm like, wait a second, does that line up with this? because the sequels were not my cup of tea. The first one to me is still a classic, holds up. It's fantastically done. Reloaded has some amazing sequences. I still stand by the Burly Brawl in that. If they could just re-render that sequence, that was unreal back in the day. The highway chase, there are moments in Reloaded that are fantastic. But then we go to Revolutions and it's all in Zion. And I'm like, it's just called The Matrix. I don't want to go to Zion. I don't care about Zion. This film does manage to go back in a way to Zion and The Matrix, and it worked for me. It's definitely not as good as the first film, but I would argue it's Matrix Reloaded has better sequences than this one. But overall, I would say the overall packed storyline probably better in this one. So potentially the best sequel. It's definitely better than Revolutions, in my opinion. I was not a fan of Revolutions. That just went so far off the deep end. I was like, but the film does sort of address the ending. It addresses why they're back, what's going on, the complications. And I do believe, while a lot of it went over my head in that I couldn't always follow it, I do believe they really were putting it all in there in that script. They packed that script with sort of explanations and justifications. And this is a film that, like I said, will require another watch to sort of catch it again and be like, oh, wait a second. Yeah, the blah, 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 and the architect. And yeah, that actually does all connect. Because as much as I can knock on Reloaded and Revolutions, like I've talked to fans of those movies, of Matrix lovers, and the plot does connect together. Like, they do explain it. There's a very deep philosophical and plot that does make sense if you take the time to learn it and pay attention. I just never chose to. Overall, yeah, I gotta say I like the film. Again, there's some moments. This film is definitely gonna get knocked for being woke especially near its ending. So I don't want to spoil it, but yeah, there's a moment at the end where I'm like, a little heavy-handed there. Okay, but anyway, still, overall, some fun moments, some fun escalation. They do some trickier new Matrix laws. Like, I don't want to spoil it, but I guess it's not really. I mean, there's a moment in the Matrix where they call it swarming, where it's like the agents, instead of just like switching into bodies, which they did, which was a cool effect in the first few, they basically can turn regular people inside the Matrix into zombies that then just go after you. So their eyes like go boo into Matrix code, and then suddenly swarms of regular people who are asleep just get turned, activated to go try and kill you. And there's a couple sequences with that actually were pretty cool. I don't want to say the action's like bad. The finale does have some action-packed stuff, and there's definitely a lot of they're trying their best with the sequences. But it's just like, how do you compare with the others? There's no set sequence except for maybe there's a moment on the motorcycle and the swarm that was pretty cool. Overall, I still think the action just left a little bit to be desired, because the problem is the Matrix was so genre defining and changed the game so much that everyone just started copying it. And now with the state of CGI and everything that's going on, like, it's more about coming up with a creative idea of like how the action takes place or where, or the scene and events, that I've seen a lot of this before, sadly still. So there's no wow factor there, sadly. There's definitely some attempts and some cool ideas. Like I said, they do try to create some there's a sort of a new bullet time moment. You'll see in the movie that I was like, all right, it's kind of clever, but in a different way. And then yes, this swarm moment was like, all right, that's cool. They definitely tried to update, reboot is the better word. They definitely try to reboot the Matrix in a way, while also still being incredibly meta in its beginning and addressing sort of those issues head on. And so I got to say, I was surprisingly impressed. It's definitely got more problems that I could get into from a plot perspective and just silliness perspective and some other things, especially the ending. But overall, look, I rewatched Spider-Man No Way Home. I was sort of like, I had plot issues, but I watched it again with a crowd, and I was like, that was so damn fun. And I got to say, a similar vibe here in that it's one of those, it's definitely member berries and sort of, fan service that's happening at times. But I do think they put a little bit more effort in the plot. It's all out there, while they may be rushing through and it's a little complicated and a little bit like, wait a second, what? It's there. And it's good to see the characters back. And I think they came up with a cool enough idea to justify its rebootness that it didn't offend me, which I thought it might. This is not as offensive as Revolutions, in my opinion. Some people probably will just find it super useless, unnecessary. But overall, I think it was fine. It was cool. It wasn't terrible. It's definitely worth seeing. I think it's worth seeing. It's nice to see these movies coming back and get in there. This film will be in theaters. I do recommend you see it in theaters. Our critics screening, they gave us a really crappy theater with terrible sound, but I imagine in a nice Dolby scene, this would play even better. So yeah, check out Matrix Resurrections. It's surprisingly funner than I thought it would be. So curious what you guys think. Are you excited for it? Are you going to be in line watching it that weekend? Or are you going to go watch it instead on HBO Max? Tell me down below your comments and thoughts on it. In the meanwhile, please hit that subscribe button, hit the bell for all alerts, smash that like button, and again, let me know how you plan to see it. Theaters, HBO, just say anything because it helps the algorithm. But thank you guys so much for watching. Whoa, a Matrix sequel finally came out. I can't wait to hear what you guys think. Thanks so much for watching here on Movie World.